Okay, so so this is the announcement, excuse me, of the pedagogic practice at Leeds University through the engagement of postgraduate research students in teaching. So my presentation will cover a brief background of the project, then I will touch on methodology, and the main focus will be data analysis. Okay, so background. So the project draws from my experience of subject leader in Italian at LCS, the School of Languages and Cultures. In this role, I had the opportunity to work with PGR's teaching assistants and mentor them in their teaching. And it was very clear to me that they were a fantastic resource for both staff and undergraduates. Student feedback in the module survey highlighted the PGR's positive contribution to teaching. Staff feedback on their experience of teaching with PGRs in their modules was very positive too. I just forgot to say at the beginning, you're very welcome to put questions in the chat, and I will get back to you if we have time just after, or I will get in touch with you. Anyway, going back to my project, so because of this very positive experience of working with PGRs, I decided to investigate what experience academic staff can learn from PGRs with teaching roles and responsibility. So I believe that a tutor's ability to be present and deeply connected with their student is not a fixed condition, but a state that needs renegotiation with the context and challenges of the teaching life. PGRs can therefore act as the middle person between undergraduates and academic staff, thanks to their recent experience of undergraduate learning. Moreover, PGRs have competences and characteristics that can engage undergraduates in their learning experience more effectively. These may include advanced skills in information technology, motivation to learn, innovative thinking, a sense of teamwork, and collaboration skills. Currently, there is a gap in literature on how junior tutors can guide and influence senior teaching staff in their teaching practice. At Leeds University, the PGRs have the opportunity to build up a teaching experience portfolio, very useful when entering an academic career. However, my study takes a stance that the more senior member of staff is the one looking for a fresh outlook and can achieve this by working in collaboration with PGRs. So my methods. So the project is structured in 4 main phases. The first phase was the identification and recruitment of participants, and there were undergraduates, postgraduates who teach, and academic staff from humanities, STEM subjects, and social sciences. Step 2 was focus groups and interviews with undergraduates, postgraduates, and academic staff. So the role of the undergraduate focus group, student focus group, was to gain a better understanding of how students value their learning experience at Leeds, how PGR contribute to the enhancement of academic teaching practice, and how PGR teaching compares with the teaching delivered by academic staff. The role of the PGR focus group was to gain a better understanding of their teaching experience at Leeds University and how they feel supported in their teaching practice. And the role of the academic staff focus group was to gain a better understanding of their experience of working with PGRs and if and how teaching delivered by PGRs can enhance academic teaching practice. Step 3 was an online survey based upon the topics discussed in the focus groups. So 3 surveys were launched, 1 to undergraduates, 1 to PGRs, and 1 to staff. Undergraduates were asked questions on what is good teaching and their experience of being taught by PGRs. PGRs were asked questions about their teaching experience at Leeds and their experience of professional development, and staff were asked questions about their experience of teaching with PGRs in their modules and best way to support PGRs in their teaching and professional development. Step 4 was teaching observation. Anyway, I'm not going to report today on my data on teaching observation. We don't have the time. So in the next 3 slides, I'm going to show some of the demographics in each group. So you can see that 221 undergraduates participated in the survey. So the first table shows the spread of faculty, so it's quite a good spread. And the second shows how many students have been taught by PGR. So we can see 190 students have been taught by PGR, so it's a good number. And 30 say, right, I am not sure. So it doesn't mean they haven't been taught. As for the postgraduate survey, again, the faculty spread, good spread across the university, the status of the PGRs. So most of them, 63, are home students, but also we have a good number of non-EU international students and EU students. I'm also showing you the roles PGR's teaching assistant play in the undergraduate teaching provision. And you can see that they are involved in seminar tutoring, but also quite a lot in assessment and marking, teaching demonstration, lecturing, and other. And postgraduates have also been asked if they teach students at undergraduate or postgraduate level or both. Most of them teach at undergraduate level, but some do teach at postgraduate level or both. As for the staff survey, again, the faculty spread on the first table. And then the question, what forms of training and support do PGR teaching assistants in your department receive? So the situation is quite, scattered, but you can see that 59 members of staff said pre-service training, followed by mentoring, and the teaching observation by a senior member of staff. There is also some peer mentoring with other PGRs. And finally, the question if PGRs have opportunity to influence module design and teaching provision, the highest score is on the fact that basically PGRs do it through informal channels rather than through a formalized system. Okay, so one of the questions we wanted to address with this research is looking at how undergraduates benefit from PGR teaching. As I've already said, early on in the research, we ran focus groups with undergraduates to understand their perception of PGR teaching assistants and the teaching they deliver. And then we took some of the quotes from the undergraduate focus group and presented them in a survey to undergraduate respondents. As you can see here, we have 214 responses, and generally it is quite clear the undergraduates were largely positive about PGR teaching. So for example, 79% of respondents were positive about the fact that they would prefer being taught by PGRs and lecturers rather than by lecturers. Quite interesting is the bottom statement, being taught by PGRs makes me feel I get less value for money for my tuition fees. So that was a statement from an undergraduate student, but most undergraduate students, 57%, were negative about that statement. They didn't feel that impacted on their sense of value for money. 24%, about a quarter of the students, neither agreed or disagreed, so they were neutral about that statement, and only 19% felt that being taught by PGRs affected their perception of their value for money. So I think largely it is fair to say that most undergraduates were positive about PGR teaching. And one of the things we did, we gave undergraduates an opportunity to provide their own comment about their experience of being taught by PGR teaching assistants, and we pulled out some interesting themes from that. So one theme I would like to discuss and share with you today is the theme of enthusiasm. Okay, so this is a statement from one of the undergraduate respondents who said that enthusiasm is absolutely the most important factor in their opinion, and that even if you are a very experienced teacher, you might be dry and unengaging, and therefore perhaps this seems to suggest that it might affect the student enthusiasm and excitement to learn about the subject, and potentially we could infer from that the effectiveness of their learning as well. In the survey, a large part of data collection was done by using Likert scale responses to statement. So these were statements we gave to undergraduate students that assessed their perception of PGR teaching. So we looked at things like whether PGR structure tutorial in a logical way, their level of approachability the undergraduates perceive when they have PGR tutors as opposed to lecturers, and whether they can communicate complex information clearly, and so on. So since we are talking about enthusiasm, I'll just highlight this statement here. And 80% of undergraduate respondents agreed or strongly agreed that PGRs are passionate and enthusiastic about their teaching. And that was the most positive response to all the statements that were provided in this section of the questionnaire. So enthusiasm, at least one student has picked it out as a really important quality for teaching, and generally it seems like their peers, there are 211 respondents who completed this section of the survey, agreed that PGRs were enthusiastic. When we look at the data from staff, staff thought undergraduate benefits from PGR teaching because PGRs are enthusiastic and passionate. That was the most significant benefit that staff identified. So 78% of staff respondents agreed that the key benefit for undergraduates was the enthusiasm that PGRs displayed about their teaching. And PGRs agreed as well. So this was 83% agreement that PGRs are passionate and enthusiastic about their teaching, and was the top reason collectively from the 103 responses from PGRs that undergraduates will benefit from PGR teaching. So it seems that across the board, undergraduates, staff, and PGRs all think that PGRs are enthusiastic about their teaching and see that very positively. But it's all very well about being enthusiastic. However, are you being effective as a teacher? So here I want to highlight this one statement, this one statement before we move on. So a lecturer or a professor is more likely to know the answer to my question about sorry, is this one? Yes, the penultimate statement. A lecturer or a professor is more likely to know the answer to my question about subject than PGR. So this one was one of the more negative or lower scoring statement from the undergraduate responses, and suggest that a lot of undergraduates disagree that a lecturer is more likely to know the answer. So it is a kind of leaning towards suggesting that although PGR teachers may be less experienced, they have a good subject knowledge. Okay, so this moves us into thinking about the level, the level of experience and good teaching, because it is all very well about being enthusiastic, but are you being an effective teacher? So undergraduate responses were not always completely positive about PGRs in their qualitative entries. So this respondent, for example, felt that PGRs feedback was less useful or productive than the feedback they got in their assessment from lecturers or professors. Their lack of teaching experience, one undergraduate suggested, might make it more difficult for PGRs to facilitate an effective group learning environment for everyone to learn appropriately. But contrastingly, being an experienced faculty member does not mean that you are an effective teacher, as a statement from one student. And the fact that PGRs are closer to the undergraduate experience might make them more aware of what good teaching entails. So here I want to highlight these four statements. Undergraduates were asked what makes good teaching. So the top score statement, 97%, is being patient, approachable, and supportive, followed by giving useful advice prior to assessment and relating course to assessment. So we can infer that behavioral factors like being patient, approachable, and supportive are regarded as very important qualities for a tutor by the undergraduate respondents. Another indication of this trend is the score 87% on the statement, a good teacher builds a relationship with students and takes an interest in their circumstances. However, the table also shows that 92% of the undergraduate respondents think that giving timely and constructive guidelines on assessment is also very important for effective teaching. So behavioral factors are very important for effective teaching, but there is also a very strong link between being an effective teacher and supporting students when they are assessed. Another interesting finding from the undergraduate responses in their qualitative entries on good teaching is that an effective teacher does not simply impose knowledge on students, but engage students in active learning activities. PGRs were especially praised for creating online materials and being very helpful with online learning. The ability to explain complex materials is also listed in the qualitative entries on effective teaching. This involves diluting information and replacing jargon with more understandable terminology. And this ability to explain challenging, complex course material in a way that is well received and understood by students seem to be one of the attributes that are often associated with PGR teaching assistants. So the next slide shows that the statement on creative interactive learning resource gets a score of 79%, and that the statement fostering an engagement environment online gets a score of 75%. As for the use of vocabulary and technical jargon, 90% of the undergraduate respondents think that a good teacher makes students feel that they can contribute without mastering specialized or technical vocabulary. However, only 30% think that a good teacher should avoid academic jargon. So it is not very clear what is the position of the undergraduate respondents toward academic jargon. We might infer that they don't mind academic jargon as long as it's very clearly explained to them. Anyway, this is something to explore in the future. Now I would like to move on to the PGR survey and in particular their experience of professional development. So PGRs were not always completely positive about their experience of professional development in their qualitative entries. So for one respondent, for example, felt that the ODMPL foundation into teaching was not very relevant to their teaching experience. However, another respondent felt more positive, although it is a general course, there was an emphasis on transferable skills. Another PGR underlined its usefulness for the process of applying for a higher education academy fellowship. The other comments show that both mentoring and peer mentoring are valued for the professional development and that perhaps a combination of both is ideal. So let's have a look at the quantitative data and on how useful was the professional development received at Leeds University. So this table shows that 51% of the PGR respondents found the feedback from teaching observation from a senior member of staff as useful. Okay. And that teaching observation is more effective than mentoring. 35% found the foundation into teaching course useful. What this table doesn't say is that all but 6 respondents had experienced at least one form of training, which is a very positive finding. We had 108 respondents and only 6 did not receive any form of training. However, there does not seem to be a consistent or standardized approach across the faculties and schools on the type of training offered to PGRs. In the next 2 slides, staff and PGR's views on who should support the PGR's professional development are compared. There is a strong agreement in both groups that module leaders and schools are responsible for that. Both groups agree that the doctoral college and the ODMPL should also support PGR's professional development, with very similar scores in the 2 groups. The majority of staff and PGR feel that the doctoral college and the ODMPL should support PGR professional development, but the score is not as high as the one on support given from schools and module leaders. And both groups agree that assessment and teaching methods are the areas where PGRs need more training. Staff responses were overall positive about their experience of working with PGR teaching assistant in their qualitative entries. So a frequent comment was about PGRs offering new perspective and viewpoints, and that PGRs provide staff with work relief. So great observing PGR tutors in class, innovation in the online space. They bring a breath of fresh air. They are studying all day. We do admin teaching. They are cutting edge in their field, and they do it in a very new way, a new point. We are stuck in our old habits of teaching in a certain way. So the qualitative data are in line with the quantitative data. So this table shows that actually staff and PGR agree that PGR teaching provide staff and with workload relief, and that PGRs provide a fresh perspective. There is a discrepancy on the statement, this one, that PGRs have a better understanding of the undergraduate experience. PGR score is more in line with that of the undergraduate responses on this point. So also the undergraduates were asked this question, and they said that 69% of undergraduates think that PGRs provide a closer insight into the learning experience, which is very similar to the score PGRs get, 67%. So conclusion. PGRs are teaching assistant, are a great asset for Leeds University and can influence and improve pedagogic practices. Staff, postgraduate research students, undergraduate students can all benefit from the engagement of postgraduate research students in teaching. However, a transparent approach to recruitment, consistent training, oversight, and structured support for PGR teaching assistants are needed to ensure the quality of teaching and of undergraduate experiences across the university. PGR teaching assistant can help to facilitate the connection between research and education, between undergraduates and academic staff. Therefore, it is important to empower them and to give them the opportunity to explore scholarship and to connect their research with research around education. Thank you very much.